Okay, happy Friday, everybody. Welcome back to the Dreamcatchers. Hi, Bryan, our lovely guest today. We're going to have you introduce yourself in just a moment. My name is Jamie Stozer, for those who don't know me, and my sister Marissa and I are the Dreamcatchers. We are sisters and business partners and started this podcast, as many of you know, really, I think it's like 2.5 years ago now. And we're just so thrilled to have folks like Bryan and on our show because we get to talk to people who inspire us that we followed along with throughout our journeys in New York City. And so honored and happy to have him here with us today to share his story. And I'll have him introduce himself in just a moment. But welcome back. This is an episode of What's the Word? And today's word, drum roll, is joy. And I think we talked about this a little bit before we came on air. But joy is not an easy thing to find these days, as we know. So finding the simple joys and following those joys in your career journey and in your career path can be super easy some days, super difficult some days. And then also with that, bringing joy to others through your career choices is a challenge. So excited to talk about some of those topics with our guests today. Marissa, do you have anything you want to
Yeah, I
add to
was
that?
I was gonna say happy Friday to all. Saying the words happy Friday, that's a joy. I think that I said off camera and I will say on camera, uh as a as a grown up, as a human, as a working parent, and really anyone in any season, in any chapter of their life right now, every day is a bitch. It is. There's like a million things that happens all day long from the minute you open those eyeballs to the minute you pass out on the couch and then transfer yourself into your bed. There's something that like goes on the whole day. And we don't even talk about 90% of them. We just swallow them down. But finding the small joys or the moments of laughter, professionally and personally, really, if that's not what life is about, I don't know what it is. And I think it's what's kept us all chugging along this year. So when we reconnected with Bryan through a good friend of ours, a choice, my friend Sarah Gould, who I've been working with for a very long time, he and I had a really good talk about happiness at work and his choices in his professional life. And he has a really good story. And when we were done talking, I was like, so Bryan, I'm going to need you to be on the podcast. So,
Sure.
and right, Bryan, doesn't that give you a good enough layup? Go ahead, introduce yourself, tell the world who you are.
Thank you. So my name is Bryan Petroff. I am one of the co-founders of Big Gay Ice Cream, a New York-based ice cream company that started in 2009 as a seasonal truck, like a little summer project my friend Doug and I decided to do. And then we moved into brick and mortar. Um, and so we're in our 12th year now, which is pretty crazy. Our 13th um, anniversary will be next month in June.
Amazing.
So I'm an Aquarius, and I used to work in HR, hence our connection with Sarah Gould. I worked with her at Warnaco. I was there for about 5 years, and HR was a an accident that happened.
Most people, us too.
I grew up. I'm in Central Florida right now. I'm not wearing glasses to be cool. I'm just avoiding the sun in my eyes, and so I grew up here. I went to college in Chicago for fine arts. Moved to New York and started temping, and I got a long-term gig. They asked me if I wanted a long-term gig. I said, "How long is that?" They said, "Oh, 2 weeks." And I said, "Sure." I mean, that's 2 weeks of pay, and at least with that agency, you could essentially work full-time temping and still get benefits and like healthcare and stuff like that. And that 2 week temp job turned into a 9 year job. So and then so yeah, so I did 15 years of HR, and then somehow Big Gay Ice Cream happened, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Oh my
So a
gosh.
2 week. So meanwhile, I serviced Warnaco at that time, and Choice has done a lot of good things by a lot of people. But we were not able to do the insurance piece until, you know, the later days. So I give you credit where credit's due for being able to take advantage of that, because as a freelancer, that is a very big challenge for many people in pre-pandemic, all the crazy things that have happened in the last 10 years in work. And as I said to Bryan before, Bryan was in the food truck business and did the pivot before pivots and food trucks were even cool. Like, so that's how cool he was. And I love in general, like if I were going to traditionally geek out on a story like Bryan, is just the simple fact that he was a kid in Central Florida that went to art school in Chicago and then ended up in New York. Most of us on the East Coast know that that story alone is like a very brave move. My grandma, Jamie, my grandma, and my uncle live not far from where Bryan's family is. And it's not necessarily a spot that springboards people to fine art school in Chicago.
As far as usually
I
you
say
get as
that
far
with
as
love.
Atlanta.
I say that with love.
Yeah. I bypassed Atlanta. I didn't want to go there. So.
I mean, that's usually as far as it goes. You'd end up at the Phipps. Yeah. What was the mall? Phipps. Phipps was the mall. I've been there. I used to work there a long time ago.
You know,
long time ago.
I think whether on purpose or by accident, being that you are HR trained, whether or not you wanted to be, or or not, you said a couple of things already that we say all the time to people we speak to in our day jobs as, a staffing agency, which is similar to obviously how you got your first temp gig. Is you said yes to a temp job. You didn't know how long it would be, and it turned into your career for a while. So that's kind of advice that we give all the time. And look at what you just shared that by accident in your intro. So I think, what I'd love to do first is, like you said, obviously being from Florida and going to school in the Midwest and then landing in New York, I'm going to guess that, there was a part of this maybe that was a dream job of yours one day, but I'd love to hear from you if you can remember far back, not to date us all, but what your earliest memory was of what you wanted to be when you grew up, because I'm guessing you wanted to go to art school for a reason. So I'd love to hear kind of those early memories of the first thing you remember wanting to be.
Yeah, sure. I've always been interested in art growing up. I started collecting comic books when I was like 8 or 9 years old. And there was a couple of artists in particular who were kind of breaking the norm as to what you consider comic book art. This was like early 80s. And I was just enraptured by them because they were actually doing like mixed media work or just very different than the typical pen and ink and halftone printing and stuff like that. So you got that going on. And then I just became addicted to going to the library and checking out history of art books. And, this is back when everybody looked at books and encyclopedias and stuff like that. And I would check out these books that were like this thick and just walk around everywhere with them in my backpack and just flip through the pages and look at artists and read about them. So, I was 9, 10 years old and reading about Raphael and Salvador Dali, or whoever was in the book that I had at the time. So, I started drawing myself. I was also obsessed with rides and roller coasters, living so close to Disney. And so I would draw my own rides and roller coasters and my own comic book characters, stuff like that. Ultimately, I ended up wanting to be an architect because, it wasn't for me though. After that, I realized that my
a lot of science, more so than most people think.
Yeah, I jokingly say I wanted to be an architect until I took physics, and then I realized
and you're like,
learning about stress
Yeah.
and strain and yeah, all that sort of stuff wasn't. It's like I just wanted to
Draw
make
the
cool
roller
looking
coaster.
buildings.
You're like, I can draw the roller coaster. I just don't understand why the speed is what it is and how you're supposed to do that.
That's the engineer's job, not the architect's job. So, and I realized, the art that I was kind of enjoying most was pretty impressionistic and sketchy, and not sketchy as in like weird sketchy, but very sketchy. And I didn't want to have to draw straight lines all the time, and use a ruler and a protractor and stuff like that. So I got into art, a number of art schools, and chose the one that was the best combination of location and financial aid, and that was Chicago. And I love Chicago. I still love it. It's one of my favorite cities.
Love it.
At the time, I was a little naive and like, oh, I need to get out of. I need to be in New York. I need to be in New York, the big city and stuff like that. So I moved there right after graduation, and but I mean, I definitely moved back to Chicago. It's just the food there is amazing, architecture is amazing. Riding your bike along the lake, it's really
People
great.
are so nice there too.
We love,
I love
Chicago. I went to school.
I remember the
Also-
first time I went to Chicago. One of my roommates from college was from Chicago, but all of us were East Coasters, so she would always visit us. And then one day she finally got us to go out there. I think it was 4th of July. And we went out, and like we went out on a boat, and like people packed me lunch and offered me a drink, and they're all pretty and like kind. And I was like, wait, you're so pretty and kind and you're offering me lunch? like a true New Yorker. I'm like, you want me to eat with you? And then I'm like, and it was gorgeous out. And I was like, is this Miami? I'm so confused. Like my pre-thought of what Chicago was so not correct.
Yeah,
And
same here.
I have since been to, I think it's the only city other than New York I've been to the most. I've been to Chicago. I've been to Chicago probably 10 times because I have such good friends that live there. And it's a great spot. So what a special spot to have gone to college.
Yeah, it was great.
I love that. So did you work in art at all through college and internships and such before you ended up moving to New York and starting that temp job?
No, the closest I would say I worked in art was in high school. I had a job at a printing company in town, printing posters, flyers.
Was that your first
everything.
job? Was that your like first real job?
Technically, it was my second job. My first job was at Wendy's.
I love it.
And I only did it because the year prior I had hosted a German exchange student, and we became really good friends. And I wanted to go visit him in Germany once he flew back. So I worked over a year to save up money to then
That's
go
a
see
true
him.
hustle. True
You
hustle.
know, Bryan, I am known to draw from original experiences and marry them to grown-up experiences to like connect the dots. That's something that we do on the podcast. And I'm just going to go that you probably really liked Fribbles.
I did love a fribble. That's, by the way, fribble.
I mean, who doesn't like a Fribble?
Fribbles and Friendlies.
I'm sorry. A Frosty.
You're thinking of
Excuse me. Oh my God. I made such a funny joke that bombed. I meant a Frosty. So
How
a
can you not
Frosty.
love? Everybody should love the Frosty. They're great.
Everyone loves. So everybody in the Friendlies Northeast, just rewind, subtract, and know that I meant Frosty.
To be fair, I worked at Friendlies. That was my first real job doing fribbles. So like, I get where she got confused. Also,
Fribbles, Frosties, whatever. It was an F. It's ice cream.
Also, now they make vanilla Frosties, which is what what we call the weird son, because like who doesn't like a chocolate Frosty? Like my one son only likes the vanilla Frosty, which my husband and my older son are like, what? But it is really good, the vanilla Frosty, but there's nothing like the original. Nothing like the original. In fact, in Cocoa Beach, where we shared with you our grandma and our uncle lived, we went multiple times a year. Wendy's was on the corner right in front of where my grandma lived. And we used to, we have a family joke that when I was pretty much my first real job was when my dad would give me money to walk over to Wendy's by myself and get lunch for everybody at the pool and bring it back. I was definitely not old enough to do that, by the way. And
there's so many things about it that just speak to the 80s. Like, here's money. Here's an 8-year-old. Go walk to Wendy's. Here's sentences. All right. Go walk to Wendy's and pick up food for lunch so that we can eat it at the pool. Like, you're not eating that at the pool.
I was able to keep the change. So I guess that was my first real job. Okay, so we are the same there. Our first real job was Wendy's. And then you worked in a printing press or printing place doing posters and such. That's so interesting. Okay, so you worked in art a little. Now, did you intern at all through college in art or not really?
I did work study on campus.
Mm-hmm.
So I did like office assistant work. I was in 2 different offices, the student affairs office. So that encompassed the dean of students, international students, job placement, guidance counseling.
So there's by the way, there's a little bit of your HR.
Yeah.
Like a tribute. Go ahead.
And then the other was in the liberal arts office, faculty office. So I would work with
the teachers,
all the faculty, and putting together their curriculum packets. And the fun thing about that is, as my boss there, Shauna, she oversaw the logistics of the liberal arts, and that was art history and liberal arts. Was she let me really have fun with what I did, and it was the first time I had to use a computer for work, because this is when the first Macs were just coming out in the early 90s. And I used to do all of these collage images that became the covers for all the curriculum that everybody got in the various classes. So if, say, it could have been a philosophy class or a writing course or whatever it may be, I would gear what I did through for that. So I would find images on the computer and print them out and then cut them up into collages. It's really funny because I jokingly say that it's not really a joke, it's actually kind of true, that I spent 4 years in art school and I spent all this money just to basically doodle and make magazine collages.
By the way, one of my strong suits, I don't talk about this at all, ever. You're the first time I've had 50 something people on a podcast. I've never mentioned out loud that one of my literally one of the best things I know how to do is collage. Like, it was something I was exceptional at. It was yearbook editor in chief. I collaged all of those things. And so when I pull out the senior book, my senior yearbook, I look at all my collages, how perfect it was. When I was in college, I would decorate everybody's walls with like the pictures all put together. So I completely hear you. And I'm sure they were so awesome. And what I think is so great about your story, even up until this moment, is you are a perfect example. If I were to package you up, a perfect example of how Jamie's favorite saying of 2020 and 2021 is, if you can't find the dream job, you need to find the dream within the job. And what you're describing is, here's this young kid that is interested in art in Central Florida and finds himself drawing and comic booking and just playing into an interest, right? Meanwhile, little do you know, Ming and Christian and the studio that they're in, that if we were all together, you'd be flipping out about all the comic stuff that they have there.
Ming's a celebrity in the comic world. That's for another day. We can talk about.
Yeah, well, I'll send you an email after class. So, and then you managed to create a pipeline for your joys in a job that was completely unexpected, and yet you always drew upon the things that made you tick and use them in your day-to-day, even after you started working in more traditional scopes, which, by the way, is historically, you were very early on that. You were honoring your own authentic self in a time that, honestly, that wasn't that normal. It wasn't that normal
Yeah.
to be like, by the way, I could collage the cover of these things for your, you usually when we on our first jobs, you did what you were told.
Mm.
That's the way it was. So
Yeah. I find myself, if I had, I was just thinking as you were talking, like, how would I describe myself? Even back then, I'm kind of a procrastinating perfectionist. I Everything I do has to be perfect, but I get bored really easily, and it takes a lot to kind of excite me to get into something. So my mind will start to wander and go off into different things if the project itself doesn't really draw me in. Um, but I do like doing project-based things, and I think that's why I stuck with this temp job that I got, which was in the incentives department of HR, and
Mm.
we were responsible for uh, sales contests and various, obviously, incentive and sales bonus programs, but also sales meetings. So at the time, it was there was a annual meeting called President's Club, where like the top performing store and district managers, they got to go on this trip. And so the first day I showed up for the job, the person he picked me up at the lobby, and he brought me back to where I would be sitting. And he looks at me and he says, "I haven't told anybody this, but I'm putting in my 2-week notice today." And I was just like, okay, I don't even know your name, so why should I care? But when I realized he was leaving, and then leaving this um, President's Club meeting, left for planning, I was just like, oh my God, I get to be an event planner. And I planned a meeting in Key Largo for 300 people. And it was just a blast. I got to fly down there, and I was at a resort for like 2 weeks watching dolphins swim around and getting paid by the hour. It was just, as a youngster just out of college, I was like, one, I can't believe you're letting me, or this type of person, a temp who's barely been with the company, plan something of this scale. And two, I'm glad you're doing it, because I'll prove to you how good I am at it. But if it had been something else, I don't know if I would have stuck around after those 2 weeks. That's for sure. But
I think that speaks volumes to the types of people you had around you, the people who took chances on you, because we do talk about this a lot, in career paths and journeys and stories. A little bit is luck, right? You got lucky, you
yeah,
got somebody that took a chance on you, you were in the right place at the right time. But Marissa is very much talking, we talk often, it's not just luck, it's the universe, and where you're meant to be is where you're meant to be. And if that was meant to be your long-term goal slash solution slash job, that's what happened to you, right? So here you are, you now tripped into something that you stayed at for 9 years, and then stayed within the industry of HR, which, for those that don't know, because often people ask me, even that are senior level people, if they don't have HR at their companies, they don't understand. I always say we're recruiters, right? But I started in HR. Recruiting gets you in the door, and HR helps you stay. Okay. So HR are the people that is the umbrella organization with recruitment, with incentives, with benefits, with, payroll. That is all the stuff that makes the day to day of a company really happen and make the employees want to be there.
yeah. Your customers are the employees of your company.
Correct. So you got this experience of customer service, and all of these experiences of customer service. So before we wrap into the Facebook feed, because we like to get to that aha moment for our Facebook audience, and then if they want to hear the rest of this conversation, they have to go to the podcasts. But tell us your aha moment, right? You spent many years in HR. Then we talked about how that's how you met Sarah, our client and friend. And you spent many years in HR and internal kind of company relations. So what happened? Tell us a bit about your aha moment as to how you got to where you are now.
Okay. So, well, I mean, definitely if there's an aha moment in my life, it would be the decision to make ice cream my full-time thing. And so the way in which my friend Doug and I started the truck was really happenstance. Um, I obviously was doing my full-time gig. It was, very corporate. Doug's background is in classical music, so he performs in orchestras. He was also getting his PhD at the time. Actually, well, a DMA, doctorate in musical arts. And a friend of his that he knew from Juilliard had started driving an ice cream truck in the summers. Don't know why exactly, but you know, she was kind of hustler. She did all of these different things to make money. She didn't stick to kind of one job. So she would work the ice cream truck. There were some summers she would fly to Seoul and work and strip and dance and save money that way.
This
and then
sounds like
fly-
this sounds like a movie musical.
I like it.
totally.
I'm waiting for the soundtrack.
She's crazy. And then the New York Times got wind of her and did an article about her. She's performed, I think, on like Jay-Z albums and stuff like that. So a very crazy life. And then Doug was looking for summer work when the orchestras are down and school's not in session. And she said, well, hey, would you want to do what I do? I'm driving an ice cream truck this summer. And he likes the idea of it being a quintessentially New York job, like getting behind a Mr. Softy truck and being on the streets, and just the craziness of the variety of people that you would meet and everything like that. He asked me what I thought about it. We were partners at the time. We're friends now, but and I said, sure, it sounds like fun, but if you're going to do it, this is where my perfectionist takes over. I was just like, if you're going to do it, we have to do it right. Don't just be yet another Mr. Softy truck. Yeah. And my feeling was, we both traveled a lot. We both love to eat, go out to restaurants. We were kind of aware of trends in cuisine because of it. And we were like, why don't we take the stuff we love, the international flavors that we like all the time, and put them on the truck? Because there isn't any other ice cream truck that I could think of that has things like curried coconut and ginger and cardamom and olive oil and all of these different things. So he loved the idea, and he posted on Facebook that he was going to do this, his personal account, and he made an offhanded comment that, hey guys, I'm going to be driving the Big A ice cream truck this summer. I'm going to be posting about the adventures of it. It's sure to be crazy. That was it. And so when it came to a name, everybody was like, well, you already have the name, but Big A ice cream. And we're like, oh yeah. So that stuck. And so
I love that. It's just he just put that out there like for fun, and then it became the name.
Yeah. And I wholeheartedly believe in you, in the idea that this whole thing was kind of a universe picked us moment. And it was a perfect time of the beginning of Twitter, the beginning of the modern food truck movement. Not obviously they've been around forever, but and the convergence of the two. Where people would tweet their location and their menu, and that really caught on. And cities like in Portland and New York started to build it all, and just the fact that it was fun and also successful, which are two things that rarely happen at the same time. I would say that was the aha moment, that it was okay to have fun at work and be silly and do whatever you want and get paid for it, and wear shorts and not have to answer to anybody. All the things that being in office entails. And so that, I think it was getting out there and just seeing the responses from people was so much fun. We rented our truck. We never actually owned an ice cream truck, so we would check it out from a depot every day. We would slap our logo on it. We would bring all of our ingredients and supplies and everything, and then set up. The depot itself had a spot that at Union Square, so we parked there every day. That kind of became our spot, and it was great because we didn't move, so everybody knew where we were. We didn't really have to tweet that much about it, but just sitting in the truck and watching people walk by, and they would look at the truck and the logo, and they couldn't help but not smile. Like, you would watch everybody go, how funny is that? Or they'd mouth the words. and and even if they didn't get anything, they would take a picture of it and then they would post it online. So, social media marketing, was invented, and our customer base became our extended marketing department, really. And that was kind of the aha moment. It took until we signed our lease for our first brick and mortar shop a couple summers later that we dived, headfirst into the whole thing. He pulled out of his doctorate program, and I left Warnaco. But for the first couple of years of the truck, when it was just a summer thing, I was still at Warnaco. So Doug would get up at the crack of dawn. He'd go out to the depot and prep and everything, and get the truck out to Union Square, start serving around 1:00 in the afternoon. I'd get out, 6. I'd go down to Union Square, give him a dinner break, and work the truck for a while. Then we'd drive back to the depot. It was in the Bronx, clean the truck, get home midnight, 1 a.m., go to bed, do it all over again. So
dreaming big does not always look or feel the way it seems on social media.
No. Social media has a great way of curating lives. And
it has a great way of showcasing a highlight moment and closeting you're not taking a picture of yourself in the Bronx at 1 a.m. cleaning the truck.
Yes.
Here's the glam shot. Well, I think that's a good spot for us to wrap for our Facebook audience, Christian. But what an interesting journey thus far, and I can't wait to hear more about how that brought you joy and how you then started to bring joy to others, even if it was just in the name, the logo, the location, and then of course with your menu and all of the amazing, incredible flavors and things that you started to do with the brand. I mean, I am a huge foodie nerd, like geek, and I followed you from the beginning because my husband and I were obsessed with food trucks and the whole concept of that from the very beginning. I joined Twitter for that reason because I had to find my favorite trucks. So thank you for sharing that for our Facebook audience. And then if you want to hear the rest of this amazing conversation, you'll have to check us out on where podcasts are found.